How do you know if you've ever dated a narcissist? In this video, I'm going to go over my experience with dating a narcissist and going through the process of love bombing, gaslighting, the discard, hoovering, along with trauma bonding and ghosting. I'm getting ready to make a big move that's about 1,200 miles away. And when I was going through my things, I came across some items that I thought I had gotten rid of to abolish the memories of this person that I dated completely from my life. But those memories had surfaced, and as much as I don't like to bring up memories from the past, I figured while I was already thinking about it, that I would go ahead and share that experience with you. For consideration of privacy, I'm not going to use the real name of this guy in this video, and I'm going to be using the name Lyle. And it started in 2017 when we met on an online dating platform, and we messaged back and forth for about a month, and then I decided that I was going to go meet him. It was long distance. I live in Bozeman and he lived in Great Falls. And so I decided to just go meet him and see who he was. Well, when I got there and met him, he didn't look the same that he did in his picture on his profile, which I was okay with that. He was clean cut and he seemed nice. And we went to lunch, and the first thing I did was took a drink of water when we got there, and I started coughing and choking and gagging, and he just sat there and just like acted really nervous. And that didn't seem like a normal thing for me for somebody to do in that situation. But I was able to recover from that, and we went ahead and had our lunch. And the things he had told me about his life in the past was that he was divorced, he had 3 children. He had moved to Great Falls and he lived in a small apartment. He moved there to be close to his elderly mother, and that he didn't have a car, which is the reason why I drove to Great Falls, and that he was retired but working from home every now and then. When our day and our afternoon was over, he took me to the park and we went to a museum and we did all these wonderful things. And when I left, he seemed like he was being a real gentleman, and I just gave him a hug when I left. And later on, during our conversations, I had invited him to come to Bozeman. Well, this is where the no car thing came up because he said he wouldn't be able to drive there, so he was going to take the bus. And I agreed to meet him halfway from when he had taken the bus. So I met him halfway and brought him back to Bozeman. And over the next 4 months, we saw each other intermittently. I went back to Great Falls one other time and I met his mother, and she was a sweet, 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 adorable lady. And it was interesting the whole time that we were talking, Lyle acted really, 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 really nervous. But during the 4 months, it was in the summertime, we had met in at the end of March. And so he would come every now and then, and we went floating and we went hiking and we did all these things. And he, got a room at a nice hotel with a nice dinner and did all these things for me. And I guess at that point in time, it wasn't really a serious relationship for me. It was a long distance relationship. And so I thought, yeah, what the heck? Well, we'll go ahead and keep doing this. But there were a few things that happened during that 4 months that I really questioned. One time when we went floating, there was a friend of mine, Mary, who went with us. And on the drive there, on the drive to the river, Lyle said to me, well, I can't wait to see Mary in her swimsuit. And I thought, well, who says that? I was shocked. I really didn't even know what to say. And during that floating trip, my tube started to deflate. And so I was sinking, 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 sinking. And I was expecting a man to be a man and help me out with it or do something. But he didn't do it. He and Mary just stayed like really close together. And I was like dragging along with this tube that was losing air. And he seemed totally unconcerned, didn't even really matter. And so I ended up getting out of the river about a quarter mile from the car and walking the rest of the way down to where the place was that you got out there. And on the way back, I asked him, I said, well, did you, you know, I really didn't have that great of a time. I was on this tube that was going flat, and he said, "Well, I had a great time. It doesn't really matter how you felt. I had a great time." And another one of the things that we did is we went and visited some friends of mine that were camping, and we went out on a boat ride with them, and they had another friend that was there. And when we got back and got off of the boat, this friend, she had remodeled her trailer and had wanted us to go see it. And I said, "Well, no thanks, I'll go over there in a little bit." Well, Lyle went over there and looked at her trailer and was checking it out. And on the way back from the lake, he told me that my friend's friend was hitting on him. Well, a few days after that, the friend that we went to go see, Nancy, she told me the total opposite flip side, that Lyle was hitting on her friend. And at that point, I didn't know what to think. You want to trust your friends and what they're saying, but there were so many things that had led up to that point that it was just really hard for me to believe that he would do something like that and then lie about it. Well, so love bombing is like what happened with me was the first stages of a relationship where they're love bombing and everything is about you, and you get gifts and phone calls, and he texted me every day, which I thought was really odd anyway. But I kind of got sucked up into this whole relationship thing, and being drawn into this person who was so attentive towards me. I wouldn't necessarily say that I was a people pleaser or overly attached to him, but after 4 months of dating, he disappeared, just flat off disappeared off the face of the earth, and that is called ghosting. And I freaked out. The human brain is not made to process information like that when you have a relationship and then somebody just disappears and there's nobody there. So I became obsessed about finding out what happened to him. And my friend Mary went to Great Falls to his apartment. I told him where his apartment was, and she went to his apartment and was going upstairs to his apartment and ran into the landlord. And the landlord told her that the name that he was using of Lyle was not his real name. I'm not going to say his real name, but it was not his real name. So she got a hold of me right away, and his apartment was cleared out. And this landlord also said, "Well, he's in a lot of trouble. He's going to be gone away for a long time." And so when I was trying to process all this information, like I said, I was a fanatic. I was obsessed. I became isolated in my home, and for the next 3 weeks, I would search the internet to see if I could find him or not. And I was able to track him down by his real name to a jail in Boulder, Colorado. That's where he said he was from Colorado. And I tracked it down to a jail in Colorado. And when I saw his booking pictures, I freaked out. It was crazy. I don't even know how to explain it. Well, at that point, I was pretty pissed off. And so I wrote him a letter. I wrote him a letter and said, "I know who you are. I know what you're doing." And ironically, he had written me a letter at the same time, and our letters crossed in the mail. And so I got a letter from him confessing, that that wasn't his real name, and that he was in jail because he did some damage to their house when he was married, and was all apologetic. And I don't know if it was because of the ghosting or mere curiosity, but I continued to write him back and forth during that period of time when he was in jail. And regardless of what he did to me, regardless of what happened, and he was in jail for a year. I kind of wrote back and forth with him for a year, and he was released from jail. It was in August 2018. And for some reason, I agreed to see him again. And I'm not quite sure why, because I had asked him for a picture of himself from where he was in jail. And the picture that he sent me was, I don't even know what I was thinking when I met up with him. This picture that he sent me, his eyes was black and he looked like a fucking lunatic. But when he got out of jail, I thought it was interesting that the first thing he wanted was his computer. That was the only thing that he was interested in getting, was his computer. And after after he got out of jail, it wasn't like we kind of picked up where we left off. I was very cautious. But then the love bombing started all over again. I guess I was so considerate, and he knew I would be considerate about him being in jail because my own son was having problems getting out of the legal system and had experienced 8 months in jail himself for contempt of court. But he knew that I would be receptive of that, and I would be understanding. And that was just part of this whole game and this mask that he had on. And so over the next few months after that, because he was out in August, and over the next few months there were the holidays, and we would get together. But I found myself being more and more and more isolated from friends and family, and didn't really engage in social events like I used to. And let me go back a little bit too, because when he disappeared, I decided that I was going to write a book on it. That was in 2018, and it's when ghosting was a big deal. And so I started writing this book. It was called The Shoebox House, and I started writing this book about my whole experience with this crazy man that I had been dating. And for some reason, I decided that he should write the second half of that part one book from his point of view. And so I let him add in his information in that book. And that's going to bring us up to about February. And I was able to publish the book, and it went out on Amazon and Goodreads. And within a couple of weeks, there were some very, very, very strange things that happened. And I cut it off with them. I just said, "Nope, no, we're done. We're done. We don't have anything in common. There's no reason whatsoever why we need to keep up with this relationship." And there's more to the story of after that, but I want to kind of go backwards about what had happened during the first 4 months that we had known each other. And now that I know, since I didn't know what a narcissist was that time, and after we broke up, I really started researching narcissism and narcissistic characteristics. And I can tell you that narcissists cannot hold up that mask for very long. It's about 6 to 9 months. That's kind of what happened with me. And that's where I've seen has been kind of a regular amount of time for that to happen. So, be careful of that. But one of the things that I had found out with my friend on the river and my other friends when we went voting is it's called triangulation. And what happens is these narcissists will intentionally create situations and try to separate like me from my friends by doing triangulation, which means that they wrap three people in there and they try to make you jealous. And then also learning about narcissism, it helped me understand why he was why he had such a lack of empathy when we were floating, and why sometimes it appeared like he wasn't even there. Nothing really affected him emotionally. He wasn't emotionally engaged, very rarely emotionally engaged. And throughout this process, I found out when he disappeared and he ghosted me was because he was arrested on the golf course. He liked to golf. And so he was arrested on the golf course by federal marshals because he was a fugitive and he had cut off his ankle bracelet and ran. He was a fugitive. He was running from the law. And kind of going towards the time when I agreed to see him again, he still continued to come to my house every now and then, on the weekends for a couple of days, and I'm not even quite sure why, because the first 4 months that we're there, we had some sexual activity, but my body was screaming at me not to do that. It was very, very, very uncomfortable for me, and that's something that I didn't listen to. Was my body was screaming at me that this was not right. This was not a good thing. And one of the things that had happened after he was out of jail, we were over at my house and I wanted to watch a movie. And he was like, "Oh, I don't care what movie, whatever movie you want to watch." And so the movie I picked was The Fault in Our Stars, which is a movie about a teenager with cancer, with a group of teenagers with cancer, and he was just adamant that he didn't want to watch it. As a matter of fact, he just picked up a book and ignored me while I was watching this movie. And another one of the things that he did was I had a little pug, and she was 13 and a half years old and ready to go over the Rainbow Bridge. And so my daughter had came and taken her to the vet for me. It was actually her dog, long story. But Lyle had said, "Well, I'm not going to come there because I know you want time to yourself and you want to be able to grieve and do this all on your own." Well, I found out why he said that later on. And one of the things I found out with regards to the movie that I watched, The Fault in Our Stars, and the pug, is that narcissists do not like being around sick people. They don't want to have anything to do with anybody who's sick or ailing of anything because it is way beneath them. Remember, they don't have feelings. They have feelings, but it's more along the lines of fear and anger. That they don't. I don't think they have that spectrum of emotions that we have, but they absolutely, abhor sickness and being around sickness, which is why that I noticed on those two specific things with the movie and with the pug. It, now it makes sense. And from the time that he got out of jail, and even before that, I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know why I was so obsessed about this whole situation. And then I found out about trauma bonding. And trauma bonding is evil. It's evil. It's when you get attached to things that cause you trauma, but it's kind of like an addiction, and you can't get away from it. And during this whole time, the whole period of time that I was with him, he was gaslighting me. And I didn't know what that was until after we broke up. But gaslighting is when they try to make you think that you're crazy. And one of the things that he had done, which I thought was really strange, is he was over at my house one time, and I have two dogs. It's a German Shepherd Rottweiler cross and a little Chihuahua mix. And he took this picture of this remote control that was kind of all chewed up and sent it to me while I was at work. And he said, "Well, look what magic did. Look what magic did." And I thought, well, that's really strange. My dog has never chewed up anything in his entire life. And then it happened again. There was at Christmas time, there was a care package that I had set up for my kids and my son, and it was sitting up on this chair in my hallway. And once again, he takes a picture of this box that was all torn up on the edge. And there was jerky in there, and I had made cookies and stuff, and the wrappers were like strewn across the floor. And he said, "Look, look, magic got into this again." And once again, I thought, oh my gosh, I'm like, what is going on with my dog? Well, when I started figuring all this stuff out later on, I remembered something too, where I had come home and my dog's water dish was empty, and I felt really bad. And I came in and I looked down, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry, I'm so sorry." But then I noticed where Lyle was sitting, he was sitting right next to the water dish. And I was like, why didn't he just fill it up? So I went and filled it up and then set it back down. And it wasn't until months later, as I'm looking back on this stuff, kind of remembering all these weird things, is that Magic doesn't have any front teeth. He's got the incisors on the outside, the fangs, but he doesn't have any other teeth. And there was no way that he would have been able to tear open that box. There was no way that he would have been able to chew up that remote. And with regards to the water dish, whenever he drank water, since he didn't have any front teeth, stuff would just fall out of his mouth into the water dish. And I remembered when I picked up that water dish that there was nothing in there. It was perfectly clean. There was no anything, because I changed our water dish all the time. And so those were situations or examples where he's trying to tell me that, my dog is doing something, and my dog really wasn't doing anything. It was really scary near the last month or so that we were together, that he was sitting on the couch and I was sitting in the chair, and my dog Magic went to go over to him, and and my dog put his head down and kind of like slumped off the other way. And I picked up on that right away. I thought, what is going on? What is this guy doing to my dog? And during this time, I had started to lose quite a bit of weight. And he would come and he would say things to me like, "Oh, I went to the gym and there's one, one gal there and she's there all the time. And, she's starting to look really thin. She's starting to look way too thin. Maybe she shouldn't go to the gym as much." And basically it was like the gaslighting and these manipulative, comments that he would make subliminally because he was an expert at it to make me feel bad, even though I really didn't even know what was going on. And another strange thing that he did to me, he was showing me something on his phone one time, and he had his phone like right in my face, right like that, looking at his phone. I was like, what are you doing? I can see it, I can see it. But I could tell that he was constantly thinking about ways to manipulating, major control thing. Everything I did and everything I said, he was always thinking about something that he could do to me in the future. Well, when I was finally able to get rid of him, I had to approach him about getting some documents back about my book. He had borrowed some documents from me on the book so that he could do some more research or whatever he said. And he also stole his authorization to use his writing in my book. And he wouldn't give it back to me. He wouldn't give it back to me. And then he said, "Well, I'll send it back to you if you mail me the money for postage." He was always so cheap. "Oh, this is cheap, and I'm so cheap, and I'm cheap about this, and I'm cheap about that." So I sent him $40 and said, "That should cover it. That should cover it. So send them back to me." Well, I never received them. And I felt like I was going absolutely insane after this whole thing. And I had no idea why I felt that way. And interesting enough, 3 weeks after we had broken up, his brother, who I had never met, sent me a message on Messenger saying, "This is who I am. I understand that you were dating my brother. And if you want to talk, go ahead and give me a call. Here's your number." And I called him right away because I thought I was going crazy. And the reason why I thought I was going crazy was because of the things that Lyle was doing after he left. One of the things he did was hacked into the company I worked for, hacked into their credit card. I don't know how he got the information. I don't know how he did it. But my boss one day, she says, "Oh my gosh, there's like $8,000 worth of charges for a vacation to Amsterdam on this credit card." And me and a coworker, because I had shared with her what was going on, and we both just stopped solid. Because in the movie, The Fault in Our Stars, the wish that they did was to go to Amsterdam. And he knew that I would know that it was him when he did that. And that is just sick, 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 and twisted. And another thing he did is he tried to put charges on my card, on my debit card from the dating company that we met on. Once again, he would know that I would know that it was him doing that. And another thing that had showed up, which is the reason why he was wanting me to look at his phone all the time, is I started getting these text messages, and I had called on it and said, "Hey, what's going on with this?" And what had come up was the name of his phone. It was like a Kyocera something or another, something or another. And the issues were resolved and everything. But I thought, oh my God, that is one sick fucker, because everything started making sense about what he had done in the past. And probably one of the lowest things that he did is hired these white vans to stalk me. And if you want the police department to think that you're crazy, go tell them you're being stalked by white vans. And these just weren't regular vans. These were like, one of them was like a space age looking van, and they were parked. I live in a condo, so it was parked across from the cluster boxes for the mail, and it was parked there. And, the first time it happened, I didn't think anything of it. Then it happened again. And then it happened at work. And the lady at the front desk had told me I wasn't there when this van showed up. She said this van pulled into the parking lot and sat there for like 10 or 15 minutes and just sat there and then pulled away. And she told me about that. And so we went on the video camera, my boss and my coworker, and we went and looked at the video camera, and there was nothing on the video camera. And so now my boss is saying, well, why, she's lying about it. She's lying about it. It can't be there. And my other, my coworker's like almost in tears because she's like, maybe I am going crazy. So I got up and I went out in the parking lot. It was a big dirt parking lot. And I went out there and I found the tracks where that van had parked, exactly where she said it was. So whoever was in the van knew exactly where the video cameras were to be able to get in and out of that parking lot without being seen. And what that did was created total chaos at my work. Another things that happened with these white vans is that I'm not sure exactly how it works in the brain, but it started to be whenever I saw a white vehicle, I would just start panicking. I would start panicking. And another thing that I did notice, and I know it was orchestrated and it was planned, is along the side street where my condo is. And I'm very familiar with that street and who parks there. But one day I looked over there from my back patio, where he used to stand a lot, drinking coffee, looking out on the back patio, and there were trees lining the street there, and all along the street were parked these were like 5 different white vehicles, and one of them was a truck that was parked like into the tree, where people don't park, especially when there's parking places all over. But it was parked into the tree where the windshield was covered by the trees and the branches and stuff. And I thought, well, that's really strange. And I finally went and talked to a couple of my friends. So I'm all dealing with this mostly by myself. And I finally went and talked to a couple of friends of mine and told them what was going on. And my friend Andrew, she said, well, you just call me. She doesn't live very far away from me. She says, you just call me and I'll come over there and bang on the window if they show up again. And so it kind of was helping me put it into perspective that I didn't need to be afraid of these white vans. And in talking to him, I was telling him about all the white cars as well. And a few days later, my friend Patty, she says, oh my gosh, she says, you wouldn't believe how many white cars there are. I said, exactly. And Angie said, exactly. That's the purpose of it, to instill anxiety whenever you see a white car. So I'll go back to when his brother had got a hold of me, and I talked to him for about an hour and a half on the phone. I was a basket case, and he knew I would be because he knew his brother. And he was very generous and was talking to me about things and telling me some of the things that he knew about his brother. And I kind of had to go through and say, okay, was this real? Was that real? Does what this told me was real? Is this true? And we kind of went through all of that. And then he started sharing with me some things that he knew. And one of the things was about his computer. He had said that he had gotten a hold of his brother's computer, but they couldn't really find anything on it. But one thing that they did find on it was grandma porn. And if that's not disgusting, I don't know what is. And another thing he told me is this damage that he did when he got divorced to their house. He took a fucking chainsaw and cut in the 7 deadly sins into the walls and the floors of his house. And he was also stalking his ex-wife. And that explained why he didn't have any contact with his children. He had made up stories about his children, that reasons why why he didn't get a hold of them. And another thing he had told me when we had during that first 4 months, I had a trip planned to go to Canada and see some bands and stuff like that. And I asked him if he wanted to go with me. And he said, no. He said, my passport is in Denver with my kids. He says, I don't know. I can't get it. I'm like, well, why don't you just have him ship it to you? So there's red flags all over the place if you're dating a narcissist. And also something that happened after his brother had called me, he kept telling me, uh, uh, protect yourself, and take care of yourself, and don't let anybody take advantage of you. And so I had gone to the police, and one of the police that I went to was a captain of the police department here. I knew him through a mutual friend or whatever, and he actually let me go over to his house and talk to him and tell him my story. And so I was telling him about all the weird things that had happened. I mean, he treated his computer like a baby. I had noticed that he was bypassing my router when he was doing things. he had this external drive that I had looked up to find out what it did, and it allowed for access into internal encrypted hard drives on computers. And as I was telling this officer the information that I had, and one of the last things was is I woke up one morning, which was the end of our relationship, and I had had some sexual abuse in my past, and I was like, oh my gosh, I said, I recognize this. They say things from our past that aren't good will often help us out in the future. Well, it really helped me out in the future, because I was like, this guy's pretending. This guy is totally pretending, 100% pretending. And so I thought, well, I'm just going to test this out. So that morning I sat down and I had told him, I said, well, we're gonna, if we're gonna be in a relationship, I was just kidding. And I said, then there's something that you need to know about. And that is that I was sexually abused, and I kind of went into that a little bit. Well, he braced himself against the counter on my kitchen. He put his head back, and his eyes rolled clear back into his head, so the whites of his eyes were showing. And I am backing up away from him, thinking, oh my gosh, what's going to happen? And then he sits down and he gets, somewhat composed, doesn't even act like he even knew what happened. And he says to me, are you calling me a pedophile? And so when I told the police officer that, along with everything else that was going on, Corey looked at me and he said, you know what? He's selling and distributing child pornography. And oh my God, I about threw up. At that point, he had told me that he was going to get a hold of Great Falls because I had enough allegations for them possibly to open up a case against him. But the hard thing about that is, with computers and electronics, people who have computers have a lot of rights. And so even though the police, the good guys and the bad guys, can all do the same thing, and even though the police were able to get in their computer, they had to be able to have legal evidence to do anything. And as far as I know, as of today, nothing has happened. But it was 8 months after that I got a phone call from the Cascade County deputy, and she was something else. She was trained very, very, very well, because I didn't want to talk to her. But she started interrogating, did you see anything? Did you see anything? Did you see anything? And at first I thought that she was blaming me, thinking I was an accomplice. And I said, no, I didn't see anything. I didn't see anything. But whatever I can do to help you get him, I'm more than happy to do whatever it is you need to do. But I never heard back from her again. So I don't know if they were able to do anything about that. But for the very last part of this, for Hoovering, with regards to the book that I had written, it was a year later, a year after we broke up. I got a package in the mail that from him that I assumed were all the documents from that book. And I just wrote return to sender on it. I had forgotten all about it. I was doing fine. And now, boom, all this stuff comes crashing back into my mind. And he did it on purpose, of course. Well, I sent it back. Well, about 3 weeks later, I come home and there this package is on my patio, meaning that he had gone there. I mean, I freaked out. And I'm kind of weird, but I went in and I got these gloves because I'm like, I'm not touching anything that he's touched. Who knows? He's just weird. And there was another little envelope that was in there with this $40 sticking out of it that I had sent him for postage along with the letter. And I thought, well, I'm curious, so I'm going to read the letter. So I opened up the letter and it started off with, hi, how are you? How's Matt? Like nothing had ever happened. Like it was like everything, nothing had ever happened. And we're doing this, and are you working on the second part of your book? And I've started on my part, but I don't think, but one thing that he put in there that really pissed me off, because I had gotten a hold of his parole officer after all this had happened and told him, sticking up for myself, like his brother said, and gotten a hold of his parole officer. And he put in that letter, it almost cost me my early release or whatever because you contacted my parole officer, but I forgive you. So one of the only reasons why I'm sharing this story is because it popped into my head. And if this video can help one person to not be in a relationship like that or not get all fucked up like I was, because it was bad, it was really bad, then it was worth doing this video. And that's why I wanted to, cover all the bases of the love bombing. Watch out for the love bombing. Things like that aren't normal. For somebody to start texting you constantly, or maybe it's normal, I don't know, but it's not. It's not a good way to start a healthy relationship. And not only once with the love bombing, but twice with me because I was so caught up in this mental psyche of ghosting and just the whole mess. It was just a whole mess. And then the second one of gaslighting, constantly gaslighting the things with my dogs and, at the gym. And there were a lot more, but I can tell you that there were a lot of things that he did that I would just thought, oh my God, this has got to be the stupidest man on the earth because he had no social skills and he was not very bright. But then if you go into, the discard, and the discard for me, unfortunately, was the second time when he started doing all of the hacking into things and the credit cards and the white vans and things like that. And the Hoovering was sending me the package a year later and trying to revamp my memories or trying to get me to get a hold of him again or something. I don't know. It's just crazy. And I know there's a lot of people out there with similar stories. The narcissistic personality, I think once you go through the experience and you research it as much as I did, I mean, I started researching narcissism and then I went on to quantum physics and it led me down this path of where I am at today. And I wouldn't be who I was if I didn't go through that. And I may have even gotten in a worse relationship. And I may have been the object of the abuse that he did towards his ex-wife. So I'm very, very, very fortunate in a lot of ways that I was able to get him out of my life. Who knows if he'll pop in my life again? Probably. Who knows if he's watching me or stalking me right now? But the thing now is, it doesn't matter. I don't care. I don't care about him, and I don't care what he does. And he's not in my present. He's not in my reality, and I'm going to keep it that way. So with this, after this video, I'm taking out the trash again, and he's going to be out of my life. And I want to say I have a lot of empathy for any of you that have been through this because it's pure hell. It is pure hell. And I hope that you can take the right steps to get your head on straight again and start living the life that you want to live. And remember, one of the things with people who have narcissistic characteristic, I don't think a lot of narcissists get diagnosed officially because they don't think there's anything wrong with them. So why are they going to go get diagnosed? But one of the things with narcissists is that they put on this mask. The reason why I was attracted to this man was because he mirrored me. He mirrored me. So many things in common. We had all this in common. And he was mirroring me, mirroring me, mirroring me. And so that's what they do, but they can only keep on that mask for so long. When it came to the point of when I finally, a couple of weeks before I said, this is it, this is done, finally did that, he had started drinking and he had started just being this nasty, nasty, nasty person. And it was really interesting because he told his mother, and I heard this from his brother, that he broke up with me because I was drinking too much. That's called projection. So if a narcissist is saying that you're doing something, it's probably something that they're doing. Another thing that his brother did too, which was really nice, is that after all that, I mean, I didn't know who to trust. I didn't know what was real. I didn't know what was real. I had no idea what was even going on. And so he offered to come to my work and meet with me to show me that he was real, that it wasn't just Lyle pretending him to be him, which I wouldn't have, I wouldn't have doubted that one single bit. But he actually came to work and talked with me for a while and kept in contact with me, pretty consistently, which I felt reassured because he said that if his brother ever came near me again to get a hold of him and he would take care of it. I'm not quite sure what that meant, but he said he had a shotgun. So it was really nice that he kept in contact with me like that. And I still hear from him every now and then, like on a holiday or a Merry Christmas or whatever. But I know that I have that person, I have that resource. If anything happens ever again, all I have to do is reach out to his brother and his brother will help me. And so if you're in a relationship with a narcissist, I guess one of the number one big things is to talk to people. Talk to people, talk to people, talk to people, and tell them what's going on in your life. Don't shut down. Don't have secrets. Don't do that, because they're masters at isolating people, absolute masters at getting people fucked up in the head and isolated. So if you are in a relationship like that, talk to people, your friends, your family, counselor, somebody. If you are doubting yourself and everything that you're doing, in my previous videos, I've talked about boundaries, intuition, and synchronicity. And at some point in there, you got to trust yourself, because a narcissist will wipe that out with a clean slate. And I had to start all over again with boundaries. I had to start with my boundaries. I had to start trusting my intuition again, and following those signs of synchronicity. And I can tell you, since that experience, my consciousness has rose farther than I ever thought that it would, because um, it's not really survival, but in some ways it is. But it was also awareness of, I have to do this in my life to protect myself. I'm a single woman, I'm 59, and this is what I need to do. And with the book that I had written, with the title of The Shoebox House, I was really, really sad and mad, because I had to pull it off of the market, kind of like unpublish it, because I didn't have that release, his written authorization to use his works. And that's the last thing I wanted, was for him to come after me saying, this is in my, you put my stuff in your book and you didn't have authorization. And so now, now he's going to sue me for it or something. And, but because I learned from his brother also that Lyle had a lot of credit card debt, and he had done some very bad things to some people that were after him. And I was actually honestly lucky to get out of that without any incidences, especially after his brother had shared with me that Lyle had told him that he was going to commit suicide. He was going to go up into the woods and kill himself. And when I was at his house for the first time, for some reason, he showed me two things. He showed me a picture of him with a black cowboy hat on, three things, with a black cowboy hat on. He showed me a picture of him at the top of a mountain from hiking there. He said he had gone there with his ex-wife. And then the third thing he showed me was a rope noose. And I couldn't figure out, I think he was trying to, he had the cowboy hat and the noose, and was trying to like combine them together in his own very, very sick way. But then his brother had told me that that noose was something that he was going to be using to kill himself. And there were other things that he did. I said that his brother had found the computer. There were pictures of things on there that he was going to send his ex-wife. There were pictures of broken objects. I mean, his brother said that this man was just evil, 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 evil. And remember that narcissists are energy vampires. They literally cannot survive without having a narcissistic supply. That's a real thing also. So a lot of the things that Lyle did to me was to elicit or bring up an emotional response to me, like the water dish, and feeling anxious, or any kind of emotion that he could get from me, because that's what he feeds on. It's without narcissistic supply, narcissists actually start wilting. They can't function. They've got to constantly seek out this supply of energy, because they don't have it within them. It's actually a very sad thing. And I had learned to, be somewhat sympathetic of narcissists, because narcissists are narcissists because of the situations in their lives. It's not like they woke up one day and went, oh, I'm going to be a narcissist. I think people can be, if they've had any trauma in their life, can go a couple of different ways. One is narcissism, and two is empathic. And both need a certain amount of energy supply, and codependence as well. Codependents are kind of the opposite of narcissists, but they both rely on other people for energy. And so just be aware of that when you're with a narcissist, they're gonna poke you and they're gonna prod you and they're gonna do everything that they possibly can to get a reaction from you. My name is Rhonda and I'm a woman's illumination coach. And if you like this video, like and subscribe and leave a comment, and we'll catch you next time.